sociobiologists and other people, anthropologists who have investigated this question for the last 100 years, are almost unanimous in reporting that there are certain occupations and roles that we seem to be drawn to in percentages, proportions much greater than our proportion of the population. Those would be, in broad sense, in areas around healing and service work to the community. E.O. Brown, for example, at Harvard, the father of the sociobiology field, has says in his book on human nature that gay and lesbian people carry the altruistic impulse in our species, that we carry something around the betterment and furtherance and support of other people that allows our species to keep evolving. You usually find this in roles that involve cutting-edge things, where there's something pushing back the boundaries a little further than they were before. I've heard some people refer to this as consciousness scouts, that were out there kind of on the edges of consciousness.
Shortly after I graduated from high school in 1965, I took a dose of LSD. I had been experimenting with some drugs, it was typical of that age, but I didn't have any idea what LSD was or what it might do to me, and ended up having what I later was able to identify as an archetypal, death experience, a kind of a shamanic death in which I had the experience of my physical body dying. It actually skeletonized, and I could perceive in a kind of bilocal vision, looking outside of my body and down on top of my body at the same time. I had a overwhelming sense of the energy in the universe, manifesting into the material world. I had a sense of a kind of a cosmic soul, and also a tremendous empathy and relationship to suffering on the planet. Not just human beings, but just the whole angst of being, of what it means to be, conscious, being on this planet. And in those days, we say, "Oh, your mind just got blown," But the truth is that in another culture, had an experience like that happened, whether it be spontaneous or induced by a plant medicine or a psychotropic, there would have been elders in the community to help me frame that experience. There would have been elders in the community to help me integrate that experience, and there would have been elders in the community to help me make some relevance and sense out of that experience. And there weren't in my community. Being a middle-class white boy in the suburbs of Los Angeles, I was forced to integrate that experience myself. And I did, slowly but surely make sense of it. But I think it would have made all the difference in the world in terms of the path that I ended up taking, the continued use of drugs that eventually escalated into full-blown disease of addiction and alcoholism. Had, at that point, there been an elder in the community to help me make sense of that experience, would have made all the difference. Yeah, that's definitely a shamanic motif, as one learns to heal, based upon one's own wounds in some ways. And I feel like I have a lot of woundedness around that.
One of my teachers is Malidoma Some, who is initiated elder with the Dagara people in West Africa, in Burkina Faso. And in his traditional village, there are gay and lesbian people. They're not called gay and lesbian people, but they're there. And he says in his traditional village, they refer to them as gatekeepers. I said, gatekeepers, what do you mean by that? He said, well, the gatekeepers are important is because they are the people who keep harmony between this world, the visible world, and the invisible world, the world of ancestors and spirits. They also keep balance and harmony between people in the village, and they keep balance and harmony between the people and nature. Now, it isn't that we begin doing it. We play those roles whether or not we're aware of them or not. Gravity works whether you believe in it or not. In the same way that gay identity, gay roles that we play, we're doing them whether we're conscious of them or not. The only difference right now is that we have an opportunity to do this dance in life with a consciousness and awareness that we never had before.
Our culture doesn't provide much eldering. And I've looked for my models really in cultures other than our own, indigenous cultures, Native American communities, where elders are revered, as were gay people, before colonization and the Spanish Inquisition and the later European colonists, the gay people were highly revered in indigenous cultures, and had a unique relationship to the community, as did elders. Well, Michael was one of the many young men, and not so young men, because our agency served, people across the board age-wise, who, showed up at the Van Ness House and continued to, the Van Ness Prevention Division, and continued to participate in the programming over a period of time. And he was, very bright, obviously had a lot of intelligence, very wounded, like most of our participants, very much in need of someone holding and seeing him in some value. Our program is completely non-judgmental about what people are doing, or choosing to do, around sex and drugs. But it's, he was this young. I don't know, I don't even think he was 21 years old when he first came to the program, but he was, slamming drugs and in and out of hotels and, prostituting himself. And you just ache for somebody like that, And we have strong, boundaries, unfortunately in our professional capacity, but my inclination was just to wrap him up in my arms and, hold him, somehow make it better. And it's just not, it wasn't permitted within the boundaries of our, of the work that we were doing. But, so he was just one of many, And the fact that he eventually moved, off the streets and got into recovery and began a new life and everything is a really wonderful thing. I wish that were true for all the people who come through the program, but unfortunately it's just not. Sometimes I'll pass my reflection in a street window or something, and suddenly look back and says, "Gosh, who is that old man looking back at me?" I'm growing old, and I want that to be meaningful. So how does one, become an elder? I don't know. I know that I'm in that process, and I'm leaning into that, and have my mentors and my support system in doing that. But to be honest, I don't know what it is other than to tend to the spirit and soul of your community. Well, I've worked, for some years now with Don Kilhefner, who is, actually I began my relationship with him as a patient. He's a psychologist, in addition to being an activist. And through the dream work that we did together, I received some guidance into, steps to take in my life. He kind of prodded me into teaching. I facilitate workshops around shamanism, especially for gay men. Never would have done that if I didn't have someone like Don kind of prodding me along and seeing the capacity in me that was longing to, be formally expressed in some kind of a, substantial, grounded way. Well, there've always been, people that show up in, one's life that um, help you to see, the capacity that you have within yourself and nourish and, support the expression of that. Some of those are definitely historical. Sitting Bull, for example, is one of them. Su, a holy man who became a warrior in defense of his people during colonization and the annihilation of his culture. And it's a very moving, story of a man whose primary purpose was to serve his community, basically, and regardless of what sacrifices that took. There are, I don't know, mythologically, maybe Asclepios, who was actually the symbol of the caduceus, the two snakes up the central pole, stems from the legend. Although he was, I think it's more than a legend. I think he's almost certainly was a historical person. But there were entire temples in ancient Greece devoted to dreams and dreaming. And a principal part of one's of life would be at one point in a lifetime to make a pilgrimage or a journey to the temple of Asclepios for the express purpose of incubating a dream, which would then be interpreted by the one of the temple priests and would probably alter the course of a person's remaining life, depending on the application or the interpretation of that dream. So people would, purify themselves, and in some cases, travel great distances and to go to this temple. And reputedly, the temple was filled with snakes, and that's where the caduceus comes from. So Asclepios, he was a healer. In fact, he was, I think, a wounded healer. He had a wound in his leg, if I'm not mistaken. That's sometimes a metaphor for, there's a lot of references in mythology to a wounded healer, and because often the times the people that become, healers in their community are often people who themselves are the most wounded, and somehow or another in reconciling those wounds, they learn to guide other people into the reconciliation of those wounds and the healing of those wounds. So Asclepios in mythology, definitely.
Guidepost?
I'm not really sure, because I think that that whatever one's path is around recovery or any other experience that brings one to a place where they need to shift and change. I'm not sure if an elder would have made any difference at that point or not, because by that time I had elders in a sense. I had the support system of Narcotics Anonymous and their program, where mentors or sponsors, work with newcomers. I had that, and I'm not sure why I picked up again, or if that would have made a difference. I know why I picked up again. I was lonely. An old boyfriend showed up in my life. Someone who I'd had a significant and meaningful relationship with. I was, lonely and horny, and he threw out some a little cocaine on the table, and I made that concession, and that one concession led to another concession, and the next thing you know, I was going down that spiral again. And it was actually kind of a good thing in a way, because when I did decide to get back into recovery and reclaim, that sobriety, I did it because I wanted to, not because I needed to. The first time I came into recovery, I definitely needed to, and I had a lot of people prodding me, but I think that as it relates to addiction and substance abuse, that you have to want it and be willing. All the people in the world, elders or otherwise, aren't going to facilitate a change. It's something that they can support you through it, but it's you yourself that have to cross through that portal. Yeah, that's definitely a shamanic motif. Is one learns to heal, based upon one's own wounds in some ways, and I feel like I have a lot of woundedness around that.
Can someone be eldered if they don't want to be?
I think that they can be eldered if they don't want to be. I think that just having a person present, even if a person is rebelling against that person, if there's a role model there, someone that carries some quality of a certain quality of consciousness, I think that there's actually there could be an oscillation between that person and another person, and affect that person, and that effect may not even reach fruition until months or years later. I know that's true in my experience. There have been people in my life, who I've suddenly thought, oh my gosh, what that person meant to me, at that time. I had a very close friendship with a writer by the name of James Leo Herlihy. He was probably best known for writing the novel Midnight Cowboy. He was a dramatist and a writer and everything, and I had a very close relationship with him. And I didn't realize until after his death, just what he meant for me in terms of a role model. It wasn't anything formal. I never thought, oh well, Jamie is mentoring me. I'm being mentored by him. And yet that's what was happening. And even now, there are times, when I, think of him and realize, what something he said at a certain time, or how he responded to a certain, event or situation, impressed me in such a way that it altered the way that I relate to the world and that I express myself.
I wanted to ask you a question.
I mean, I don't know who's orchestrating all this, but the last place in the world, I feel like I've had 9 lives at least by this point, if not more, in my life. But I know that I could never have imagined, being where I am right now, doing what I'm doing right now, involved with the people that I'm involved with right now, doing the work with the gay men's medicine circle that I'm doing right now. I could never have predicted that, 20 years ago. And in a way, I kind of owe my recovery to that in a way, because prior to recovery, I was a striving artist, an actor. People actually predicted a big career for me. And had I not sabotaged, some of my support system and my opportunities around that kind of stuff, with my substance use, God forbid I could be doing that now and be one of those, monsters, So, because that's what's happened to some of my peers, that did succeed in that, industry. They have become kind of monsters. So, in retrospect, I think everything happens, for some kind of a reason, even if you're not sure what that is at the time that it's unfolding or why. Becomes meaningful. And,